Savage, and I am here with my esteemed colleague, Dr. Kristen Donnelly, who is our Executive Vice President. And today we are talking to you live about Season 2, Episode 1 of A Handmaid's Tale. So what we're doing this year, as opposed to last season where we did kind of written blogs about it, we're doing video blogs. Obviously, we're on live. Hello. So we're going to talk about some key themes that we've talked about throughout the season from an academic perspective, because we are both doctors in social science, and so we like to use our academic brains, particularly to analyze television shows, and this adaptation of Margaret Atwood's A Handmaid's Tale is tailor-made, really, for this type of analysis. So if anybody else is watching this and doesn't know, this is going to be some academic analysis coming at you. I have a background and expertise in imprisonment and confinement and resistance, and Dr. Donnelly has a wealth of experience in gender and women and religious studies. So buckle up.
We have some thoughts.
We do. We have lots of thoughts.
So just to give a brief recap of what happened last night, we opened up immediately after last season where Offred / June is being taken somewhere. And we discover that she's not the only handmaid being rounded up and taken somewhere. And they end up in some sort of ode to Rome. Instead of a Colosseum, though, they're in the abandoned Fenway Park. And they pretend to hang them as some sort of punishment. And then the rest of the next, I want to say, third of the episode is about Sister Lydia and Offred in a battle of wills over exactly what freedom means, in a way. And Erin's going to get a little bit more into that in a couple seconds, because she's going to talk to you about some of Offred's things of resistance. I'm going to circle back to this after Erin's done and talk to you about some of the religious language that Sister Lydia used that is just inappropriately addressed. So we'll do that. And then we flash back to before Gilead, and we see June and her husband and their child living life. And one of the key elements that we learn in that thing is that one of the small ways that they had kind of stripped America, had kind of set itself up for Gilead, is that children were the absolute primacy. So June's daughter was sick, had a mild fever, and June got an incredible amount of trouble for just giving her a Tylenol and sending her to school. I don't know about you, but I think my mom did about 900 times. Right. And it was honestly, you would have thought that she encouraged her child to kill a puppy. The level of she had CPS come for her because she sent her kid to school. So lots of issues with that. And then, but delightfully and hopefully, at the end of the episode, we confirm that she's pregnant. She's 5 weeks pregnant. We see Serena and the commander again. And didn't we just miss them? It's so good to be reunited with old friends.
They're my favorite.
So we see them again. We confirm that June is pregnant. And then boyfriend, who sometimes I forget people's names, by the way, and I refer to them by slang words. Erin will make sure you know the names.
Nick. No, I looked it up because I was like, oh yeah, that dude. What, the eye guy? Yeah, so I looked it up.
Yeah.
Nick.
So boyfriend, who is the actual father of the baby growing in June, has always been a little bit rebellious. Mm-hmm. And he and his pals slipped June a key after her OB appointment. And June breaks out. And we end the episode with her burning her handmaid's costume, cutting her tracker out of her ear, which Erin did not watch.
I did not watch. I was just like, tell me when it's over.
And saying that her name is June Osborne. She is 5'3", 140 pounds, viable ovaries, which...
Yeah, 5 weeks pregnant.
Never have I described myself as having viable ovaries, BT Tubbs.
You got to start right now, though.
Yeah, and she concludes with that she is free. Mm-hmm. And then, largely, my jaw just dropped to the table, and I was like, what am I supposed to do with all of this?
I know. So the first, minute of the episode, I turned to my mother and I was like, wow. Oh, so we're going for it. We're going for it right away. and then immediately hit pause and went and got my notebook because I am a nerd and I need to write things down. So we are good doctors. We are doctors, in fact, and we take notes. So I scribbled down all of these notes. And really, I mean, one of the biggest things that we saw in season 1 was the way that Gilead confines women. And, you know, we talk about imprisonment, particularly imprisonment studies. You know, you think of like a jail cell, but we all know that there's many forms of confinement and control, which is what this show is about, what this world is about, is controlling women. And men, as we talked about, you know, they're controlled, but they're also the ones in power. So they're designating the level of control. And they might feel confined by their roles. Like, I think we certainly see that Nick is confined and pushes back against his role as an eye. And certainly, you know, resists that control by forming an emotional attachment, which nobody's supposed to do because Gilead's the best. But forming an emotional attachment with June and caring for her and eventually caring for the child that they made, enough to break her out. So there's lots of ideas of confinement, but obviously what we see happening immediately is this collective punishment for the collective resistance. And that's the biggest kind of symbol of that, you know, string of gallows in Fenway Park. And really using fear as a mechanism for control, because we all know that they weren't going to kill all of them because those are viable wounds. And there are so few wounds left in Gilead, apparently, that they're not going to kill all of them.
But like,
by the end of it,
as viewers, were made to sit in the fear of the handmaids for a long time.
Oh, yeah. And by the end, I was starting to say, like, oh, well, maybe they'll kill a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was like, oh, they look like they're going to go through with it. And so they bought us even into that fear and control as well. And that's all to keep them subjugated, which we know. So we see, you know, the women conforming again. They're outside in the rain on their knees holding stones. Aunt Lydia is going to town. That woman went to church in this episode, like, proverbially. She was... That image of her, like, pulling the bell, just crying, as if the greatest joy in her life was that this woman was forcibly impregnated. I was like, really have a box for you right now.
Yeah, she was very clearly a charismatic preacher before Gilead started. Like, she had, like, a Joel Osteen level church happening before. Yeah. Or if she didn't, she had missed her calling. Because girl can twist theology with the best of them, but it's not my turn yet. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay, because we both get excited about how wonderful Ann Dowd is as an actress, and so she just sucks people in. So we start to see, they find out that June is pregnant, Offred is pregnant, and then she gets whisked away immediately. She is saved. Mercy, is it under his mercy or some? Praise be his mercy. That's what they kept saying. Sure. So she is spared the humiliation and the torture and the subjugation of her compatriots-ish. She at least gets to come in and be dry for a bit. What I found really fascinating, and I hope they pick up on this again, I don't know that they are now that she's escaped, but I was kind of hoping they would go down the hunger strike route with June. I think that's what she was thinking she was going to do when she refused the food. But what was fascinating was once they showed her that hole in the basement where that other woman was kept who had rebelled, boy, did she snap real quick to, you know, yes, Aunt Lydia. So the whole dichotomy of preserving herself is really coming to the fore again. And I mean, the whole episode really, particularly for confinement, is this idea of freedom to versus freedom from that Aunt Lydia introduces. And that frames the whole episode. And we see glimpses of what freedom to looked like. But it's always around June's choices and June's choices about her body. So freedom to choose to go off birth control, freedom to work, freedom to, you know, make all of these choices. And this freedom from, which we all know is really just imprisonment, control. They are selling it as safety, but that's BS. It's control. Yeah. So we get that whole thing going back and forth throughout the whole episode. towards the end, where she quite literally breaks free of her confinement and runs through the longest tunnel on God's green earth, I was like, is she literally running out of Gilead? Is she going to come out in Canada? Like, where is this going? And after her jaunt in the meat locker, we then get the big time resistance, right? Which is the burning, the cleansing, which is this like ritualistic, symbolic cleansing of her de-individualized self, her off-red, I only belong to the, commander version of herself, back to, I am June Osborne, which she was always that person, right? She corrects the nurse in the hospital a couple of times when she tries to give her husband's last name. But that was like the biggest reclamation of identity, which is a huge part of any confined person's, incarcerated person's experience, is being able to have a sense of who you are as an individual. But, so I think that wraps up my thoughts on imprisonment. It was a really big episode for that kind of symbolic reclamation. But I was watching it listening to all this religious language that I don't really know or have a background in. And I was like, well, I can't wait to see what Kristen has for us. So, balls back in your court, mate. What was that nonsense?
It was nonsense, is what it was. So for those of you guys who haven't joined us before, I also have a theology degree and was a pastor for a little while. And so, I know the Bible real well, taught out of it for a long time, still love it, and really pissed at how they're bastardizing it. So it really, so just a couple quick highlights. First of all, June concludes the intro with, and this is a direct quote, "Our Father who art in heaven, what the actual fuck?"
Yeah.
I want you to know that I've said very similar words. I think most Christians have, to be completely frank. So I love that moment of levity, like, what's going on? I could talk in detail about every single phrase Aunt Lydia used, but I want to point out one kind of overarching thing, in that everything that she quotes, which is, it's mostly hybridized from different parts, like, what she was saying a lot as she was walking around was the first commandment. But she took language that isn't in the first commandment and kind of shoved it in. It's in other parts of the Old Testament, but she's kind of making her own scripture. And it struck me really strongly last night that they can't use anything from the New Testament. Because the New Testament, the theology of the New Testament is one of redemption and grace and community and all of these things that Gilead can't be. So all of the things that she's going to tell you are going to be the Psalms, they're going to be Numbers, they're going to be Deuteronomy, they're going to be the old book. And a lot of people refer to that as the Torah. And to a certain extent, a huge part of the Old Testament is the Jewish Torah. But the Jewish Torah is also interpreted through the rabbinical writings of the Midrash and other things like that. So even the Torah is not the full story. So that Gilead is treating the Old Testament like the full story is completely incorrect. And then beyond that, they're bastardizing it to their own purposes.
Yeah, that's some cafeteria Christianity there.
It's insane. Yeah. So I could go, it grieves me on a level that there's a lot of people for whom this is very familiar version of Christianity. This doesn't feel super weird to some folks. And that's one of the ways Gilead became, because you start assigning imprisonment language with religious language, and we see this all over the show. We see this in how the Catholic Church was involved in the Rwandan genocide. We see how the various Afrikaner churches were involved in apartheid. When you drape imprisonment dictums with religious language, it takes on a deeper dictum and a deeper passion, and people will go along with it faster because God wants me to do this.
Yeah.
I have no idea what God Gilead is worshiping. I can't put a pin on him or her because each one of them seems to continually recreate this God
for their own purpose. Yeah.
It's an thing. And the other thing that, I love the little details in this show, that we heard this beautiful version of a woman's work, as we were talking about June's pregnancy throughout all of that, like that. But the little thing that got me was as June was leaving the OB clinic, I don't know if anyone else peeped this. I know you did. The Socratic symbol or hippocratic symbol that's behind, thank you, not Socratic, that's a different thing. That's, usually for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, it's that medical symbol that's like a staff with a snake and then wings.
Yeah.
So little known trivia fact that most people might not know, that's actually a reference to the Old Testament. It's a reference to a story from the book of Numbers. When the Israelites were wandering around the desert in 40 years, so they had left imprisonment in Egypt, Moses was dragging them through the desert. Nobody knew what was going on. There came a time in which God told Moses to put a snake on a bronze pole and put it in the ground, and anyone who the snake bit, as long as the person would look at the snake, they would be healed.
Right.
And that then Christians take this to be Jesus on the cross, the Son of Man is lifted up for the redemption. But the pole is a huge part of the way to redemption. And in Gilead, they've replaced that pole with a woman's body.
Yeah.
So the way to cleanse themselves of their corporate communal sin is a woman's womb. Sit with that for a minute, y'all.
But not that the woman owns that womb either.
Her womb is still communal.
Yes. The womb is the property of the state, which we very clearly see through, obviously. So that's the fascinating. There's no personal ownership. And making it a part of, like, the medical symbol is, just reinforcing that symbolic ownership. We own your bodies, and you are just a vessel. That is it.
Yeah. But you are a vessel because you are how we will find our redemption. Like,
that's crazy talk. Yeah.
There are states that do that in real life. There are states that talk about, I don't know where Gilead's going. I read a review that the headline was, it's crazier than season 2 and worse than real life. Or crazier than season 1 and worse than real life. And like...
whoa, nervous.
So I don't know where we're going. So my number one question is, what is Serena Joy going to do to Hannah?
Yeah, big question.
Now that has been, that deal that Serena and Offred made last year is gone.
It's gone. Yeah, because that was the thing that was so confusing to me at the end, was that June was very clearly choosing herself over her daughter, because that was the threat, right? You keep my baby safe, I keep your baby safe. And that was going to keep June in line. And then, man, she just booked it out of that hospital. And I was like, well, Serena Joy has your daughter. But I think she's flipped that switch to just back to her individual self. And, staying alive and fighting this and doing whatever she can is going to, I don't know, we're going to find out. That was one of my biggest questions.
Yeah. And then, so I question that, and then I question, I want to go to Canada and see what Luke and Hussein from Orange is the New Black are doing.
Yeah, Moira.
Thank you.
It's a very Irish name, so I remember it.
There
Moira.
Yeah, what's going on in Canada?
Yeah, so hopefully we'll see that in season 2. So I think that wraps up everything we have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed our excited rant. Obviously, we have a lot to say about this.
And please comment below with yours, because we want this to be a discussion. We love this idea of a visual book club. So comment away. Thanks for all your very kind comments on our recap of season 1. We're so glad this is what some of you guys were looking for. We hope it continues to be. So this is the international symbol for commenting. So please comment.
Please comment. So this video is live on Facebook. It'll go up on YouTube this afternoon. It will get reposted on our blog tomorrow morning, so you can find it anywhere. Abby researches on social media. We will be sharing this video. And we'll be back next week. Just a reminder, we'll only be doing 1 episode per week, because obviously it's a lot to talk about. Mm-hmm. We know they're releasing 2 at a time, I think, for the rest of this season, but we'll be doing 1 a week. So this is going to carry us into June, folks. And so next week we'll be back on Thursday with episode 2, which is, I looked it up on IMDb, it's called Unwomen. Nervous. And I think we're actually in the colonies with Rory Gilmore.
Oh, yeah, the gender trader, our good friend trader, yeah.
Our good Glenn? Yes.
Off Glenn, yeah.
And I don't remember her real name, but I think her Gilead name was Off Glenn. So yeah, we're back with her, I think, and maybe Canada. Who knows? We'll find out, but we'll be back next Thursday with you guys. Comment, like, share, let us know what you think, and we will talk to you then.
All the best.
Bye.
Bye.